Discipline is rarely a punishment. It's a way to clear the map. Remove paths that only drain attention. Make fewer choices by design. Naval calls this leverage, small rules that multiply time and focus. The quiet promise isn't more doing. It's less distraction. A tidy field of choice. Habits become the quiet machinery of a life. They do the sorting for you. They make the important visible. Not heroic willpower. A gentle architecture. Imagine mornings without decisions. What would you finally have time for? So, where does that architecture live? Mostly in three places: attention, what you notice and what fades away; environment, the rooms, the objects, the frictions you inherit; story, the quiet narrative you tell about who you are. There is also the shadow, impulses kept in the dark until they pull the strings. Map those axes. Make choices at each point. Start small. A desk with one notebook. Morning light spilling across the page.
Move from map to motion. Discipline is architecture. One tiny rule rearranges hours. Remove friction, uninstall an app, place a chair by the desk. Keep the kettle warm. Make cues obvious, notebook open, pen uncapped. Reinforce gently. Small wins stack like quiet compound interest. Naval called it leverage, choices that multiply without more force. You don't need more will. You need smarter context. Pick one minimal change tomorrow. Watch what it quietly makes possible. Those tiny rules change the map. But habit anchors deeper. Identity is the story you run on repeat. Jung called the shadow the parts you hide. Discipline meets both, context for action, and witness for what resists. Try this: name one recurring excuse. Ask, who benefits from that story? Write a truthful sentence about the person you want to be. Feel the friction without judging it. Invite the darker piece to sit at the table. Then, notice what shifts when shame becomes a question rather than a verdict. When the story softens, habit needs shape. Resolutions shout. Rituals whisper. A resolution demands change. A ritual rehearses it, again and again. One is verdict. The other is choreography.
Rituals give a frame. They reduce ambiguity. They turn decision into motion. Stoics called it premeditatio, briefly imagining hardship so we meet it with less surprise. Voluntary discomfort is a small, chosen test. These are not punishments. They are experiments in steadiness. A simple exercise: choose one morning or evening anchor. Pause. Take 3 measured breaths. Name one intention aloud: brief, true. Do 2 small, repeatable actions tied to that intention. Close with a single quiet beat.
Practice this for a week. Watch how a tiny sequence changes the feeling of showing up. Notice what resists. Notice what returns. What shifts on day 3? Rituals save choices. They quietly free a corner of the day. That corner holds attention. Attention is currency. The world trades on it. Apps, alerts, endless invites, they ask for small pieces of you, again and again. Each switch leaves a residue. Your mind carries the last task into the next one. It becomes heavier. Minimalism is not only about things. It is about commitments. A smaller list buys clearer focus. A single uninterrupted block, 45 minutes, 2 hours, yields depth that scattered effort never reaches. Practical moves are simple. Turn off non-essential pings. Close and use tabs. Schedule a recovery minute between tasks. Breathe twice before you move on. Notice the weight lift.
Imagine a desk with one object on it. Light falling across that object. What would you place there if attention were the only thing you could spend? If attention is currency, narrative is the ledger. Little stories keep the accounts. They tell you what to spend and what to save.
A micro-narrative is a line you repeat. Not a slogan. Not a demand. A simple context. I sit by the lamp and I write for 20 minutes. I close the door, put my phone face down. Say it once. Say it again. It begins to weigh less like willpower and more like a map. Stories reduce ambiguity. They turn choices into cues. They give the shadow something to recognize. When the body hesitates, the sentence nudges it home. When others know the line, it becomes a small social contract. Ritual language multiplies leverage. Imagine the desk and the single object again. Now imagine a sentence folded into your pocket. It can be humble, precise, unglamorous. Which sentence would you carry to that lamp? You tuck the sentence into your pocket. You light the lamp. You sit. The line holds you there.
Rest is not reward. It is practice. It trains attention the same way effort trains skill. A short walk. A deliberate pause. Closing the notebook like closing a door. Small signals that mark endings. Small signals that invite beginning. Notice the body's edges. The shoulders. The jaw. Where you tighten when a task drags on. Use them as instruments. A breath. 2 steps. A cup of tea. A 10-minute stop that is really a stop. These rhythms protect your capacity. They make repetition sustainable. What would it be to meet rest as part of the agreement you keep with yourself? Take one small lever. Not a list. One hinge. Maybe it's the first 10 minutes without a screen. Maybe it's closing the door to work at 5. Maybe it's saying a single line to yourself when you begin, I will stay here. Simple. Concrete. Faintly sacred. Pair it with one ritual. A folded page. A walk around the block. Lighting the lamp before you write. Repeat it until the body remembers. Give it a story. A short sentence that names who you are becoming. Not an order. A possibility. Let this be modest enough to survive a hard day. Let it invite you back when you fail. Fold the plan into your pocket. Walk out of the room. Close the lamp. What will you quietly keep tomorrow? You left the lamp at the threshold. The hinge is small. The plan is modest. Now look at the terrain. 3 axes will hold most choices: attention, environment, story. Attention is where energy lands. Environment frames what options appear. Story, the identity you tell, decides what feels possible. Underneath sits the shadow. The unnamed urges and grievances that nudge you away or pull you back.
Discipline does not live in will alone. It lives where you steer attention, alter context, and gently rewrite the sentence you use about yourself. Make cues clear. Reduce needless choice. Tell a story that remembers you. When those lines cross, effort grows quieter. Picture a small map on a wooden table. One mark. One narrow path leading out the door. The path is narrow. It benefits from small guardrails. A single rule. A single removed friction. Make the phone invisible in the morning. Put the kettle where you see it. Lay out your shoes the night before. One cue, repeated, becomes permission. These are not vows. They are tiny architectures. Shift the context and the choice collapses. A minute of setup saves hours of decision. Naval calls that leverage, little inputs that scale quietly.
Behavioral psychology names the pieces: cues, friction, reinforcement. Minimalism clears the field. Habit design borrows energy from the environment, so will needn't be relentless. So start with one rule you can keep. Test it. Notice how it bends the map. And then ask, without hurry, what story would make that rule natural? You asked earlier, what story would make that rule natural? Start there. Sketch a simple map. 4 landmarks. Attention, what you notice and what you ignore. Environment, the shapes that invite action. Identity, the story you wake up wearing. The shadow, the unspoken pulls that reroute choice. Discipline lives between those landmarks. It pins attention where it matters. It sculpts the frame around decisions. It nudges the story you tell about yourself. It doesn't erase the shadow. It names it.
Think of it as a small compass. Not a crusade. A tool that points, again and again. When the compass is steady, choice is narrow. Clarity arrives. Not by force, by rearrangement. Picture a map on a kitchen table. A single line, penciled in. Coffee cooling. Light through the blinds. Which line would you trace next? You sketched the line. Now imagine footsteps along it. Small moves, repeated, become geography. A cue at the edge of sight. Shoes by the door. A notebook on the pillow. One locked app, one rule, no screens for the first hour. These are not moral orders. They are changes in friction. They shift probability. Naval calls it leverage. A little architecture yields outsized return. Behavioral science gives us the tools, cues that start the action, tiny rewards that end it, barriers that stop the false starts. Make the desired choice the easiest one. Make the tempting choice a small hassle. Start with one rule. Simple. Concrete. Low resistance. Watch how the map redraws itself. And then, after a week, a month, notice which rule quietly did the most work. Which one will you try first?
You picked a rule. Now look inward. Habits live inside stories. Short sentences we tell ourselves about who we are. I'm not built that way. I always fail. They are small narrators, persistent and quiet. Jung called the shadow the parts we exile. Not evil, unattended energy. It nudges us toward old patterns when new rules appear. Discipline stumbles when identity lags behind action. So start with a tiny experiment. Try on a different line about yourself for a week. Watch how attention follows the claim. Notice the friction that stays. Name the thought that shows up first when you try. Be curious, not furious. Let the shadow speak its need. Meet it with a small, steady gesture. Picture a shelf of labels. Which one do you lift, and which do you set down?
Take that new line you tried on. Make it a small ritual. Rituals are short sequences. They use the body. They anchor meaning without argument. A Stoic would call it premeditatio, rehearse the edge so the ordinary stays steady. A deliberate annoyance, a cold splash, a brief silence, reminds you of choice. These are not punishments. They are cues that translate identity into motion. Choose one. Keep it tiny. 3 breaths. Place 1 glass of water by the bed. Close the door before you begin work. Each action says, "This is who lifts this day." Try a 2-minute exercise now. Sit. Breathe twice slowly. Name one small act you will do today. Place your hand on your heart. Wait. Notice what shifts. What question does that ritual leave hanging?
That little ritual does more than steady the morning. It marks your attention. It tells the day where to land. Attention is currency. Not because it buys things, but because it buys experience. It is finite. It leaks. Switching tasks leaves a thin residue, unfinished thoughts that cloud the next moment. So make small defenses. 1 phone in another room. 1 hour of single tasking. A closed door. A 2-breath pause before you answer. These are simple salts. They stop the bleed. Minimalism here is practical. Remove a claim on your mind and you amplify what remains. A modest span of focus yields disproportionate return. Listen to what fills the quiet when distractions fall away. What story does your attention keep returning to? Which story will you let it write?
You asked which story your attention will write. Stories are small lights. They point quietly. A phrase. A promise. A named habit. Each one narrows the field. Call them micro-narratives. Short sentences you repeat. I finish 1 page. We eat together, no screens. I return to the work after 10 minutes. They do 2 things. They reduce ambiguity. They give the shadow a script. There is social weight too. A promise spoken aloud changes the stakes. A shared line becomes a gentle contract. Ritualized language, the words you use when you begin or when you fail, steadies return. Imagine a neighbor who always leaves one lamp on at dusk. It became her signal. It became her habit. The lamp didn't force her. It simply remembered for her. What short line might remember you tomorrow? The lamp remembered. Your body must, too.
Work has a shape. So does rest. They are not opposites. They are a rhythm. Like tide and shore. Like inhale and release. Discipline can be the timing of that rhythm. A rule that says 10 focused breaths, then stand. Close the laptop. Walk to the window. Make tea. Small gestures that mark an ending. They teach the nervous system to expect return. Notice the cues your body already gives. A tight jaw. A restless foot. The way your attention thins. Treat those as gentle signals, not failures. Make pauses intentional. Short. Ritualized. A line you say when you stop. A place where work is set down and left. Rest becomes practice, not pardon. What small shore will you place between effort and renewal? So start with one lever. A single, small change that removes a choice. Make the morning coffee the night before. Close the browser at 4. Put your running shoes by the door. Add one ritual. Short. Concrete. 10 breaths before you reply. A walk after the last email. A quiet phrase you say when you set work down. Give that a story. Not a slogan. A line you can repeat when your attention thins. Something true. Simple. Keep it modest. Plan to return, not to be perfect. Practice the boundary. Watch how the edges of your day rearrange. Tonight, choose one lever. One ritual. One line to carry you home. Then notice what opens. Now look inward. A lever only changes a life when something inside you reaches for it. Habits live inside stories. You act like the person you believe yourself to be. Small rules that contradict that story fray quickly. There is a quieter work beneath repetition. Not force. Naming. Notice the voices that claim you: ambition, doubt, the quiet shame. Jung called the shadow what we hide from light. Discipline meets that shadow by inviting it in. It does not fight. It listens. Try this once. When a choice arrives, name the part that wants to avoid it. Say the fear out loud. Without argument. Ask what it fears losing. Let the answer be brief. These questions loosen old shapes. They do not finish the story, but they begin a different kind of keeping. You named the voices. Now you need a way to meet them that does not require more will. Rituals do that. They are small rehearsals. They turn a vague intention into a predictable movement.
A morning prelude, open the window, 2 breaths, make the bed. A work prelude, a glass of water. Close the tab you don't need. Write one clear sentence. Stoic premeditatio. Reduce to 30 seconds. Imagine one small obstacle and soften. Try this once. Before your next task, close your eyes. Breathe in for 4. Breathe out for 6. Touch something solid, the table, the floor. Say, quietly, I'll begin. No drama. No promise. Observe how the body shifts. Rituals don't fix everything. They invite a different tempo, and then what wants to happen next? Rituals change the body's readiness. They also guard a quieter asset, attention.
Attention is currency. It is finite. It fragments when you chase novelty. Each switch leaves a residue, a small noise that follows you into the next task. Design reduces that leakage. One tab. One clear sentence. A pocket of unscheduled time. Turn off what you don't need. Soft boundaries matter more than sheer will. Minimalism here is practical. Fewer choices. Deeper commitments. A room with one chair. A phone in another room. Small frictions that keep the thread intact.
This isn't scarcity for its own sake. It's clarity. Choosing where you place presence. Letting value accumulate. Listen after a focused hour. Notice the space that opens. What story lives in that quiet? What small narrative will protect your attention tomorrow? Stories do the heavy lifting. Not grand tales of destiny. Small, repeatable sentences that cue the body and stop the mind from wandering. I am the kind of person who writes one page before breakfast. A good day ends with a clear surface. A short phrase. A public note. A text to an accountability friend. These are tiny contracts. They shape what you notice first and what you ignore next. Imagine Anna. She closes her laptop, walks to the window, breathes with the kettle. She says, out loud, one clear line. She writes. The line is mundane. The return is steady. Over months, the phrase becomes shorthand. It summons work without drama. Narratives do two things. They reduce ambiguity, and they forgive failure. They hand discipline a shape you can carry. Which quiet sentence will you learn to say when the day tries to scatter you? Stories give shape. The body keeps time. We are not meant to run at full throttle. We are woven from cycles. Focus, then ease. Push, then recover.
Make simple boundaries. A work window. A clear end ritual. Close the laptop. Stand. Drink water. Walk for 5 minutes. These are small permissions you grant your nervous system. Listen for somatic cues. Tight shoulders. A shallow breath. The mind that insists there is one more thing. Treat those as signals, not failures. Honor shorter rhythms too. Try a concentrated stretch of attention. Then a genuine break. No screens. No planning. Let your blood and breath settle. Rest is not indulgence. It is necessary craft. It shapes the next burst of work. If your day were arranged around these little returns, what would you hold sacred enough to stop for? We have given the day a shape. Now we make a plan small enough to keep. Pick one lever. Not 100. One clear change that removes a decision. For example, the first hour is single-tasked and sacred. Or the inbox stays closed until lunch. Make that default. Add one ritual. A brief hinge that marks change. 3 slow breaths. Close the laptop. Move a cup to the shelf. Write one sentence, what you moved forward today. Repeat it tomorrow. Give yourself one sentence to carry. Not a slogan. A plain truth you can live with. I make room. I finish the small thing. Let it be soft. One lever. One ritual. One story. Try it for a week. Then listen. What opened? What stayed stubbornly closed? Do the experiment. A week of the small plan. Watch for the subtle shifts. Not just what you finish, but how the morning feels. Does indecision thin at the edges? Does one closed door free another to open? Listen to tone. The quiet in your choices. The small relief when a decision no longer lands on you. Notice where friction reappears. Where the shadow nudges you toward old habits. Name it without judgment. That's information.
Tweak the lever gently. Move the hinge. Change the ritual's timing. Keep the story simple. Make room for mistakes. Return without fanfare. Leave a corner unsealed. A small unfinished thing. So you always have a doorway back. What does that open for you? Now, when the week finishes, don't rush to judge. Sit with how mornings feel. Did a choice land lighter? Which small door stays closed, and which opened? Look for patterns, not perfection. Trace the moments you paused. Where did friction reappear? Where did the old story press its thumbprint? Let that information breathe. Adjust one hinge. Shift one cue. Keep the rest as is. Practice return, not grand repentance, just steady re-entry. These are small reorders. They accrue in margins. They ask for steadiness more than willpower. Tonight, make a simple note. 3 lines. 1 lever. 1 ritual. 1 story you'll try again.
Then wait. Listen. See what moves. Now, sit with that note. Let the week lie open for a moment. Discipline here is not punishment. It's a map. Think in 3 folds. Attention. Environment. Story. Attention is where your gaze goes. Environment is the doorway that nudges you. Story is the voice that names you, the sentence you repeat in the pause. There is also the shadow, the small, stubborn impulse Jung pointed to. Discipline acts between these elements. It reroutes attention, rearranges cues, and quietly edits the story you tell yourself. Begin with one axis. Watch where your eyes rest. Notice what the room invites. Hear the sentence that stops you. Picture a table, an old map spread open. A single pencil line, deliberate and small, tracing a new route. We name the terrain. Attention. Environment. Identity. And the shadow, those quiet urges that slip beneath your notice. Attention is the lantern. Where it falls, things matter. Environment is the room. It opens certain doors and closes others. Identity is the voice that narrates your steps, the sentence you return to when you hesitate.
Discipline works between these points. It moves the lantern. It shifts the furniture. It alters the sentence. Small interventions. Low friction. Slowly, the landscape changes. Picture them as three markers on a simple map: gaze, context, story, with the shadow running along the margins. Discipline is the cartographer's hand, not a hammer. It redraws the paths you habitually take. So begin modestly. Choose one marker. Tilt that lantern. Move one chair. Try a kinder sentence. In the hush after that choice, something else becomes visible. Now move from map to motion. Start very small. A single rule. A tiny change in the room, the schedule, the sentence you tell yourself. Place a book on your pillow. Close one browser tab at a time. Put a bowl by the door for your keys. These are low-cost bets. They add up. Naval calls this leverage, small inputs yielding outsized returns. Discipline then is architecture, not struggle. Remove friction. Add a cue. Reward the smallest success. Over weeks, choices thin. The lantern stays where you point it. You need less force to walk the path. Try one modest rule. Wait in the quiet after it. Notice what opens. You set one rule. You felt the quiet after it. Now look inward.
The room you arranged has an occupant, an inner story. It names who you are. It directs small motions. Jung called the hidden part the shadow, impulses that slip beneath awareness. Discipline meets these stories. Not by force. By clarity. By choosing a story that can be repeated. Try this. When you hesitate, notice the sentence that rises first. Name it. Ask where it came from. Give it a time and a place. Then offer a counter sentence, small, believable, true to one morning act. Over time, identity and habit begin to align. Listen. What story will you let in? Rituals are not resolutions. They are small frames that shape a day before willpower arrives. A stoic pauses to imagine loss. A ritual invites rehearsal. Voluntary discomfort, cold water, an empty inbox hour, teaches the body how to return. Start simply. Before you open your devices tomorrow, sit for 5 breaths. Name one clear action, 20 focused minutes, a single email, a short walk. Speak it aloud, once. That extra line turns a wish into a movement. It softens failure. It normalizes return. Try it now. Breathe. Say the act. Notice what shifts. After a ritual, attention becomes the prize. It slips away in tabs, alerts, unfinished threads. The mind carries residue, a half-done plan humming at the edge. Discipline, here, is subtraction. Remove one app, close one tab. Say no to one meeting. Make a clear boundary, 30 minutes, closed door. The returns are simple. Depth replaces quantity. You trade noise for presence. Minimalism is not austere. It's deliberate spacing for what matters. Notice how one small lock, a ruled hour, a single task, changes everything. Then ask yourself, what single sentence, said daily, would protect that hour? A sentence can anchor an hour. Short. Repeatable. Heavy in the right way. Imagine Anna. She wakes before dawn. She boils water. She writes one line, I meet my work at 6. Not a promise of greatness. Just a promise to appear. She tells a friend. The friend checks in on Tuesdays. The sentence becomes a contract. A cue. A small grammar for her day.
Micronarratives do the same. They stripped out. They turn choice into habit. They also forgive absence. They ask only for return. Listen to the quiet of that promise. Notice how it sits in the room. What story will meet you when you come back? You come back to your sentence. Notice what follows. Rhythm is the quiet shape that holds sustained work. Effort arrives in waves. So does rest. Discipline is choosing the return, not the struggle.
Schedule attention in blocks. Honor short recoveries. Stand. Breathe. Let the body punctuate the day. Somatic cues, a tight jaw, a heavy chest, are honest maps. Pacing is ethical. It protects meaning. It keeps practice human. Try a small experiment. Work with intent for an hour, then do nothing for 5 minutes. See what opens in that silence.
If that hour and 5 minutes landed, you have what you need, a small plan. Pick one lever. A single rule that narrows choices. Make it tiny. Tie it to a ritual. 2 breaths before you sit. Closing the screen with intention. Give it a line of story, I come back to work because I choose clarity. Say it once, Practice the return. Fail. Return again. Keep it modest. Notice how the day shifts. Then listen. What quiet rule will meet you tomorrow? Let it sit. Not as proof, but as weather to watch. Treat the rule like an experiment. Notice the small frictions. The moments you want to bail. The tiny returns. Anchor it to a gesture you already make, your hand on the mug, the click of a light, the slow inhale before you begin. Fail without fanfare. Come back without drama. Over weeks, the rule will either feel like a shelter or it will teach you what to discard. Tonight, set one small signal. Tomorrow, answer to that signal once. Then listen. What shifted? Now, take stock. Name what moved. Was it your attention? The space around you? The sentence you told yourself? Or the small tug you hide from the shadow?
Think of 4 landmarks. Attention, where your eyes and thought land. Environment, the objects that nudge you. Story, the line you repeat about who you are. Shadow, the unseen impulse that works by habit. Discipline touches each differently. It steadies attention. It edits context. It shifts the story. It invites the shadow into view. Picture a folded map. A single pencil mark. Follow that mark. That pencil mark becomes a rule. Small. Precise. A closing of options. 1 minute of silence before email. A single place for books. A cold shower twice a week. These are not moral tests. They are lever points. Naval named this leverage, tiny inputs, outsized return. The science is simple: reduce friction for what you want. Add friction to what you don't. Cues become triggers. Repetition layers into architecture. Over months, the world rearranges itself around that rule. Discipline stops being willpower. It becomes the way your day unfolds. Choose one. Place it lightly. Watch what bends toward it.
When a rule holds, you notice where it holds and where it doesn't. The visible pattern is only surface. Underneath is a smaller geography, the stories you tell about yourself. Identity is soil. Habits are seeds. Some seeds fail because the ground rejects them. Jung named that hidden terrain the shadow, impulses, fears, comforts you hide and yet meet every morning. Discipline that lasts learns to speak to that shadow. Not to punish it. To understand its need. A simple prompt helps. Before you act, name the voice guiding you. Is it fear, habit, or a promise? Listen. A silence. Then the next choice. Once you can name the voice, you can design a return. Rituals are that return. They are small rehearsals for who you want to be. Not heroic feats. Simple, repeating motions that re-anchor attention. A cup of water taken in silence. A single sentence said before work. A moment to fold your hands and breathe. They make identity concrete. They tolerate failure. They call you back without judgment. Try this. Now, pick one tiny action. Do it the same way tomorrow. Notice how the shape of it settles. Notice how it becomes a finger pointing home. A pause. Then the next small step. Rituals are anchors. They carve small rooms of intention. What lives in those rooms is attention. Attention is scarce. It's the quiet currency you spend on choices. Most of it drips away: notifications, half-started tasks, the leftover pull from yesterday's worries. That residue makes discipline feel harder than it is. So be selective. Name one focus for the morning. Close the tabs you don't need. Remove the queue that asks for constant reply. These are small defenses. They change what you can do with time. Imagine a single clear window of quiet. What would you place inside it? That clear window costs something. Attention is a limited balance. Each unfinished task leaves a thin film on the glass. It dulls the light. Guarding focus is less about heroism and more about boundaries. Fewer promises. Planned blocks of time. Turning off the channel that pings you. A short ritual before work, a breath, a two-word cue, a deliberate step tells your mind where to go. These small defenses stop the slow leakage. They give weight to a single choice. Then a question settles in the quiet. What phrase or gesture will call you back when the glass clouds again? Stories do what rituals begin. They set context. They make a path visible. A micronarrative is simple. A phrase. A tiny promise. A public rule whispered to one person. I write before news. Tea, then work. The story removes a question. It lightens attention. It invites a different self into the moment. Picture someone pausing at the door, saying, softly, we do the work now. The body aligns. The mind unclenches. A small story can carry you through fog. Which quiet story will you let hold you next? Discipline lives in rhythm, not in relentless drive. Work, then loosen. Focus, then unfocus. Notice the body's small signals: a tight jaw, slow breath, a wandering gaze. Let them be data, not failure. Try shorter spans of deep attention. Follow them with time that is truly free. No planning. No productivity promises. Just rest that counts. Make recovery a rule. A ritual even. A timed walk, a silent cup of tea, a 10-minute lie down with the lights low. These are not indulgences. They are moral acts. They protect the work you want to do. If rhythm holds, discipline endures. What one small pause might begin your pattern? Keep it small. One lever. One ritual. One story. Pick a single lever, one tiny barrier you remove, or one small friction you add. Make it obvious. Make it repeatable. Choose a ritual that fits the body. 5 quiet breaths before work. A glass of water at the edge of the desk. A 10-minute exit bell.
Find a story that holds you. A few true words you can say when will falters. Not a promise. A locator. This is not a verdict. It is a starting shape. Try it for a week. Notice what softens. Notice what resists. A single lantern on a long path. Which lantern will you light tonight? Keep the lantern lit for a week. Check it each evening. Notice what light reveals, a smoother step, a thought that returns, the soft resistance at the edge of habit. When you fail, do not tidy away the trace. Study it as a map. Change one tiny thing. Repeat. Let the ritual weather. Let the story hold you. This is not a deadline. It is a slow experiment. Tonight, light one small lamp. Walk a few paces. Listen. See how the path answers.
You walked the lamplit path. You felt how attention tightens around a single step. Attention is a currency. It leaks. Unfinished tasks leave a residue, small pulls on your awareness. Discipline, then, is less about force and more about architecture. A cleared table. One inbox rule. A phone silenced. These are not heroic acts. They are boundary work. They convert scattered energy into a single beam. With less noise, choices become fewer and more meaningful. Start small. Close one tab. Say no to one meeting. Notice the space that returns. Listen to the quiet. What story will that silence let you tell? Silence makes room for a quiet story. Small phrases do the heavy lifting. Coffee before email. 2 hours of deep work. They are not slogans. They are local laws that shape attention. A friend once promised himself a walk before deciding. That daily walk changed the shape of his choices. What little story could gently reroute your next hour? Discipline lives in 4 places. Attention, where you point your mind. Environment, the room that arranges your choices. Identity, the story you tell each morning. And the shadow, the impulses you hide. Think of them as a simple map. Not to fix you, to orient you. Picture a table with a folded map and a single pool of light. Maps are quiet until you step. Discipline lives in small pivots. One removed cookie jar. 1 minute of practice. A light that signals work. These are frictions lowered, cues given, tiny reinforcements. Naval called it leverage, small inputs, outsized outcome. Choose one rule. Let it do disproportionate work. Watch months stack like dominoes. Then listen for what shifts.
Habits sit on a foundation of story. The name you use for yourself shapes the next choice. Jung called the unowned parts the shadow. They tug, sabotage, protect. Discipline without integration becomes brittle will. Meet the parts that resist with curiosity, not force. Notice one recurring line you tell yourself, at work, at rest. Hold it for a breath. Invite a small, different reply. What reply might you try? Turn story into ritual. Small repeats carry weight. Stoics called it premeditatio, rehearsal softens surprise. Choose one tiny form, a 2-minute pause before work, a single deliberate breath before meals, a line you say when you sit to write. Do it 3 days. Notice how returning feels different from forcing. Stay with that feeling. What small ritual calls you now?
Rituals buy attention. They carve white space around what matters. In a world engineered to steal our gaze, a simple rule becomes a border. Discipline is not brute force. It's the choice of where to lend your attention. Notice who and what keeps asking for it. Which single thing will you protect today? Rituals buy attention. Now treat that attention like money. Each distraction is a small withdrawal. Attention residue lingers, it taxes your next move. So close accounts you don't use. Say no, choose one deep commitment today. Let shallow tasks wait. Notice how your body loosens when focus is protected. A quieter life is not less, it's richer. What would you spend your attention on if it were finite?
Think of attention as currency. Each ping is a small withdrawal. Each choice asks you to convert it into motion. So make fewer deposits. Define the accounts that matter. Close tabs. Schedule a single, nameless hour for deep work. Use a start ritual, kettle, breath, a chair pulled closer, to signal that this time is not for spending lightly. Notice the residue after a distracted hour. It follows you. Minimalism is not removal for its own sake, it's a guardrail. What might you place in that quiet chair? Stories scaffold attention. A quiet sentence before you sit, "This hour is for making," narrows the choices that follow. A brief, public promise does the same, it gives edges to private will. These micro-narratives steady movement. They lower the friction between intent and act. If one small line could hold you tomorrow, what would it say? Stories give a container. Rhythm fills it. Discipline is not unbroken strain. It is a pattern, concentrated work, deliberate rest, small rituals that close the loop. Notice the body's signals. Let effort arrive in rounds. Then let it go. Recovery is practice. It keeps the work honest. Try one slow cycle tomorrow, 40 minutes, then 10 of nothing, and listen to what shifts.
Leave the lamp on. Sit with one quiet rule. Tonight, notice where your attention naturally drifts. If it wanders, welcome it back without drama. Small returns are the work. In the morning, check gently. Over weeks, the lamp will seem less bright, not because it faded, but because the room settled into its own light. And then, what else might you leave on? Let the lamp be a test. Sit with its light and watch where your gaze goes. Attention is the quiet currency of the day. Small distractions exact a toll. Each choice spends it. So ask not how to do more, ask what deserves your attention. Close a tab. Silence a notification. Leave 1 minute empty. See what returns. What will you stop buying with your attention? Where your attention goes, story follows. Small phrases shape small acts. One line, I return to the page, narrows the crowd of choices. A quiet promise to another. A morning ritual that removes debate. These micro-narratives become scaffolding. They make discipline less about force and more about fit. Sit with that. Stand by the lamp again. What sentence meets you when the light goes out? That sentence becomes a tide. Work draws out, rest returns. Discipline includes both movements. Set a small boundary. Notice the body when attention wanes. Schedule return, not rescue. Let recovery be deliberate. A day paced like breath, push, exhale. The question is not more will. It is how softly you come back. What does pause sound like in your day? Start with one small lever. A short ritual. 5 minutes. One rule you can keep. Give it a name. Make it easier than you think. Expect wobble. Return gently. Let the plan be a frame, not a sentence. Practice until it feels ordinary. Then let silence do some of the work. Notice what that quiet opens.
Let the plan settle. Watch small rearrangements, mornings that breathe, a quieter inbox, choices that fall away. Not triumph. Just room. Keep your single rule. When you wobble, return without drama. Over time, the frame becomes home. You learn what to protect and what to let go. What might fill that newly quiet space? Now attention becomes the home we protect. It's not more tasks, it's the choice of what occupies the room. Small subtraction is discipline. Close the tabs. Lower the invitations. Let your eyes rest on one thing until it finishes. Notice the residue when you switch too often. Build gentle thresholds, a door, a 2-minute pause, a rule to decline. Guarding attention feels less like willpower and more like making a quiet house. What would you let into that quiet room? Let the stories furnish that quiet house. Short lines. A social promise. A ritual phrase that acts before you ask. Micronarratives steer attention by default. They lessen debate. They become a doorway. Hold one now, a sentence you can breathe. Which line would you whisper to yourself in the dark? Discipline includes rest. Rhythm, not relentlessness. Work with intention. Then return. Let the body mark the boundary. A slow breath before a task. A deliberate stop after an hour. Respect the small recoveries. They compound. Rest is moral, it preserves the work you care about. Try one small pause now. Notice where your attention softens. What might arrive in that silence? Pick one lever. A single, small constraint that narrows choices, automatic, invisible. Add one ritual. A short, repeatable act, a breath, a note, a cup set down. Attach one story. A few words that orient you back when you falter. Practice them gently. Let them live. Then watch. What arrives in that space?
Now, tend it like a slow fire. Light the rule. Return when it dims. Keep nothing elaborate. Notice small openings, a cup still warm, an hour that feels quieter. Over months, these openings rearrange the room around you. You will notice new lines forming. Hold the question lightly, what changes if you stay long enough? Now notice what occupies that newly quiet hour. Attention is the scarce thing, more than time. It spreads thin across obligations, pings, and polite urgencies. Discipline, here, looks like subtraction. One fewer choice. One closed tab. One committed hour. Small removals change the field. Let your gaze settle. Which single claim will you let go of, so something deeper can arrive? Notice the story that slips into the quiet. Discipline is often carried by tiny narratives. A sentence you repeat. A social agreement. A ritual phrase. They narrow choice without shouting. For some, I write before the day begins. For others, we wait until dinner to check devices. They make returning simple. Which sentence could live in that empty hour?
Those sentences settle practice. They also demand tempo. Discipline without rest is a metronome stuck on one beat. Work needs return. Rest needs intention. Notice the body's small signals. A softened jaw. A lengthening exhale. Build a tiny rule for the pause, a walk, a cup, a 5-minute unhurried breath. Let effort have edges. Let recovery teach you when to begin again. What would the rhythm of your day sound like? So take one lever. One small, non-negotiable gesture each morning. A ritual, tie shoes, pour water, sit for 2 breaths. A sentence you can say when decisions swell, I return to this. Let it be simple. Let it be forgiving. Let it be patient. Then step away. Observe. After a week, notice what has shifted. What would you keep?
Now look inward. Notice where choices live: attention, environment, the quiet story you carry. Discipline touches those places where you put your gaze, the rooms you walk into, the sentence you say before action. Think of it as a simple map. A few axes. A lantern on a dark shore. Which axis will you steady first? Small rules wield disproportionate force. One removes friction. One becomes a visible cue. A single habit, repeated, reshapes context. Naval called it leverage, tiny input, outsized outcome. So design your day as architecture. Move obstacles. Make the right choice obvious. Reward with warmth. Let the environment do the heavy lifting. Begin with one rule. A modest hinge. Then watch where it opens. Which lever will you place first? Habits follow identity, not the other way around. The stories you repeat become the ground beneath your choices. Beneath those stories sits what Jung called the shadow, the unlabeled urges, the fears that reroute effort. Discipline is not a dagger. It is a steady bridge. It holds practice and invites the hidden parts in. A useful prompt: when you reach for a rule, ask quietly, who am I becoming now? Name one small truth. Breathe. Wait. See which part of you answers. Rituals are invitations, not punishments. They turn intention into repeatable form. Think of premeditatio, a quiet rehearsal for what may come. A small daily motion, lighting a lamp, writing one line, becomes the frame of your day. Do it once. Without fanfare. If you miss it, return. No moral ledger. Just practice. Tonight, choose one precise motion. Breathe. Notice how it settles. What will that motion ask of your attention?
Attention is currency. Every trivial choice withdraws from that account. Rituals buy you balance. Simple rules protect the balance, one task at a time, one screen, one clear return. Close extra tabs. Trim commitments until breathing is possible. Notice what clings after a day. Watch the residue. Where will you spend the next small coin of attention? Stories precede action. Not grand myths, but small, repeatable phrases, micro-narratives that steady the day. They shave doubt. They offer a soft contract with yourself. A line you return to when choice fractures. Sometimes practical. Sometimes private. When a phrase feels true, the body follows. What quiet sentence will you carry with you tomorrow? Those small sentences steady the hand. Now attend to rhythm. Effort is a tide. Rest is an equal practice. Not reward. Not absence. A deliberate return. Short breaths between tasks. Recovery seated into routine. Notice the body's quiet alarms. Begin to pace, not punish. Could discipline be the art of coming back? Choose one lever. Small. Noticeable. A 2-minute ritual, morning or evening breath, a pen, one prioritized task. Give it a line of identity. A phrase you can repeat without strain. Return when you miss a day. Make recovery part of the rule. Shrink obligations. Protect the gaps. Start simply. Begin again. What single, quiet practice would carry you forward?
Keep one promise. Make it small. Let it sit on your calendar like a gentle stroke. When you falter, come back without drama. Notice how the space changes. Over months, small returns redraw the map. If curiosity stirs, follow it tomorrow. And now, breathe. Listen. What quiet thing will you protect tonight? That promise takes shape in the margins. It narrows choices. It clears the small clutter of the evening. No drama required. Habit gathers quietly. You may not notice tonight. Name one tiny test for tomorrow. Let thoughts soften. Breathe. Listen. What will it ask of you next? That little test lives in 3 places. Attention, where you place your moments. Environment, the scaffolding that nudges choice. Identity, the story that makes one choice feel true. In the shadow, the parts that pull in private. See them as axes. Shift one and the landscape tilts. Imagine a map sketched on fogged glass, fingertips tracing the route. Maps on fogged glass call for footsteps. We don't need grand overhauls. We need small, precise rules. A mug moved. A locked app, a marked line at dawn. Micro decisions stack like compound interest. Leverage lives in tiny increments. Discipline becomes architecture, not constant force. Soon, we'll unpack simple, high-return moves. For now, imagine handing one small rule to your future self. What would you choose?
That small rule lives inside a larger house, your identity. What you believe of yourself organizes attention. Unconscious parts, Jung's shadow, nudge you toward ease, toward shortcuts. Discipline steadies the house. Not by force, but by welcomed agreement. Invite a dark impulse into the light. Ask, which story about me makes this hard? Listen. Then choose one line to answer with tomorrow morning.
Now turn that line into a ritual. A tiny, repeatable form. Not a decree. A rehearsal. A morning pause. One careful breath. A deliberate route, water, light, pen. Stoics practiced premeditatio. Voluntary discomfort shapes limits. The aim is pattern, not purity. Over days the pattern becomes a room you move in. Tomorrow, pick one small motion to start the day. See how it lands. The ritual is also a gate. It frames what reaches you. Attention is a quiet currency. Spend it carelessly and the day fragments, tabs open, thoughts trailing. Minimalism is not scarcity. It's intentional selection. Remove the small frictions that steal it. Close a door. Name the task. Let one light in. Notice the residue of unfinished things. Then listen. What story will you spend this attention on? Attention chooses a story. Small phrases act like signposts. A quiet sentence, I write one page, narrows 1,000 distractions. Social contracts do the same. They give behavior a shape. Tell yourself who you are, softly, and watch choices align. Stories are not promises. They are grooves you return to. What line will pull you back when the day loosens its hold? Discipline lives between effort and rest. Work without return becomes brittle. Rest is not reward. It's part of the practice. Notice the body. A tight jaw, shallow breath, those are signals. Seed small pauses into the day. A 5-minute descent. A slow walk. A deliberate stop. Let rhythm carry you. What small interval might keep you steady? Choose one lever. Make it small, a single rule that removes a decision. Pick one ritual. 5 minutes of descent before doing the work. A breath. A slow walk. Adopt one story. I am someone who returns. Simple. Repeatable. Practice gently. Failures become notes, not verdicts. Hold the plan lightly. What might shift if you carried just that?
Let that plan live in your pocket. Not a rule book. A compass. When the day unfurls, reach without deciding. Breathe. Begin the 5-minute descent. Do the small thing. If you fail, close the page and begin again tomorrow. Over time, the map redraws itself. Notice what feels easier. Notice what returns you to center. What comes next? Begin by naming the terrain. Attention. Environment. Identity. The shadow. Attention is where energy gathers. Your surroundings tilt behavior. The story you tell decides what stays. The shadow hides the rehearsed impulses. Discipline lives at their intersections, a cue in place, a tiny rule in the story, a gentle friction removed. Picture a worn map on a quiet table. Where will you pin yours?
Maps matter only when you act on them. Begin with one tiny rule. A single friction added or removed tilts a day. Place the journal on your pillow. Put the phone in another room. Swap I'll try for one clear if then, when morning comes, 2 pages. These small moves compound like interest. Naval named it leverage, small inputs, outsized returns. Design the cue. Reduce the choice. Make the return automatic. Imagine a thumb-sized domino. Where will you set it down? The small domino sits where the story begins. Habits follow a self-image. The quiet narrator, the one who believes you are capable or not, writes the rules. Jung named the shadow, the parts we exile that stare us sideways. Bringing them in steadies the will. Ask one patient question: what story fills the silence before you act? Listen. Identity settles into rhythm when repeated in small, unremarkable acts. Rituals are not vows. They are rehearsals, soft architecture for returning. Start with 1 minute. A single cue, a simple motion, a phrase you can keep. Let failure be a doorway, not a judgment. Practice the same small step tomorrow. Notice how the world rearranges itself, quietly.
Those small rituals buy you something precious: attention, a quiet currency. Not quantity, but quality. When habits nest like stones, fewer choices remain. Attention stops scattering. You notice residue, half thoughts clinging to windows and feeds. Minimalism is not austerity. It's clearing the lens. Make one boundary. A single guarded hour. See what rises in the quiet. What wants your attention next? Attention finds structure when a story holds it. A small phrase. A quiet promise. I write at dawn. Not a crusade. A container. Social contracts do this too: shared expectations that end the debate. Ritual language turns actions into identity. Over time, the sentence is enough. You stop deciding. The story carries you. Picture a lantern you light each morning. What little sentence would you whisper to keep it burning?
That sentence is a spark. Light needs cycles. Work, then dim. Repair, then rise. Discipline arranges time into seasons as much as into rules. Notice how your body tightens before a task, relaxes when it's done. Honor those shifts. Schedule emptiness as intentionally as action. Small recoveries compound like habits. If you attune to the rhythm, effort sustains itself. What would rest feel like if it were part of your practice? Keep it small. One lever. One ritual. One story. A lever: remove a single friction, store your running shoes by the door. A ritual: the first 5 minutes are untouchable. A story: the person you return to. Make the plan forgiving. Few rules, Room to fail. Return. Breathe. Then step back. Watch how the map rearranges itself. What will you try tomorrow?
Pick one lever. Leave it visible. Keep one ritual brief, untouchable. Speak a small story to remind you who you return to. Make room for failure. Do less, not more. Then step away. Observe quietly how the room of your life shifts. A small groove appears. A choice becomes easier. Wait. See which corner of your day begins to breathe. Let that breath become a measure. Stay with small returns. When you miss a day, come back without ceremony. Let ritual outlast mood. Observe habits as weather. Some storms pass. Some patterns rearrange. Across weeks a quiet settles, less frantic, more chosen. What waits in that softer corner of your day? Choose one lever. A single, decisive constraint. Choose one small ritual. 5 breaths before you begin. Choose a sentence that tells you who you are. Practice them softly. Miss days without judgment. Return. Leave space between each action. And listen, later, for what quietly wants more. Carry one lever. One ritual. One sentence that names you. Practice them lightly. Miss days without apology. Rest when you must. Return when you can. Over months they become a quiet grammar of living. Now breathe. Notice what arises after the silence.
Keep one small practice close. Let it sit like a warm stone in your palm. Miss days. Return without calculation. Over time the stone becomes a path marker. Ask yourself, quietly, which tiny rule would steady your morning? Let the question rest. We will open it again. Let the question sit. Now imagine a simple map. 4 axes: attention, environment, identity, the shadow. Discipline here is not force. It redirects where attention rests. It shapes the frame. It rewrites the story you repeat. Hold that map like a window, a faint hand tracing paths on fogged glass. Start small. 1 friction removed. 1 rule added. A bowl on the counter, phone in another room, 1 sentence written before breakfast. These micro decisions stack like quiet pulleys. They turn will into architecture. Watch how leverage grows in silence. Which small rule changes your next hour? Beneath these small rules sits a quieter blueprint, the story you live by. Identity shapes what you reach for. The shadow, those hidden impulses, tests every new ritual. Discipline steadies when you name the story, then meet the parts that resist. Try a small question. Which version of you wants to keep things as they are? Begin with a tiny ceremony. Not a decree, but a repeatable frame. A morning step. A single sentence you say and mean. Rituals forgive wandering. They bring you back. They change the map by changing the moment. Which small ritual could meet you tomorrow morning? Rituals save attention. They simplify choice. Fewer small decisions. A quiet doorway into focused work. Attention is currency now, spent and drained. Guard it with frames, thresholds, and gentle refusals. Notice what lingers after a ritual ends. What kept returning to your attention today?
If attention is money, treat it with quiet bookkeeping. Close tabs you don't need. Set a single stove to simmer. Work in audible windows. Let margins exist. Reduce openings that pull the mind back. Small deletions matter more than heroic effort. What would your day hold if you guarded 1 hour like treasure? Let a quiet story do the heavy lifting. Simple phrases. Small promises exchanged with yourself. Say, I am someone who protects this hour. Repeat it before you sit. Over time, the line between habit and identity thins. Listen to that change. See where it leads.
Notice what keeps returning to your mind. Each glance, each small task, is a tiny withdrawal. Over time they add up. Guard a single place for deep work. Let fewer things call you. What do you quietly choose to fund with your attention? Start by naming the terrain. Attention, the narrow beam. Environment, the room that answers you. Identity, the quiet story that steers choice. In the shadow, impulses that surface at night. Discipline lands where they meet. Imagine a paper map, folded and creased. Where would you unfold yours? Small rules. Tiny gates that steer larger currents. Remove one friction. Add one cue. Over time, leverage multiplies, like patience with interest. Discipline becomes architecture, not martyrdom. A single rule: place the book on your pillow, lay out the shoes, reshapes choice without argument. Try one. Notice what opens. Habits rearrange space. Identity does the heavy lifting. The stories you tell become scaffolding. Your shadow, the hidden wants and excuses, waits for acknowledgement, not judgment. Integrate it slowly. Ask, who am I when attention falters? Let the answer be small. Let it grow.
Now translate that quiet work into ritual. Small, repeated forms. A morning phrase. A single deliberate act before work. Voluntary discomfort as calibration. Rituals forgive failure. They call you back. Try 1. Breathe. Name one intention. Do one small visible task. Wait. See what softens.
That small return leaves space. Space for one thing, attention. It's the quiet currency we spend unconsciously. Rituals buy us a few unbothered minutes. Now, guard them. Reduce the calls on your mind. Choose less. Notice what keeps pulling. What deserves this rare, simple currency? When attention is scarce, stories become scaffolding. Small, repeatable lines that cut through indecision. An identity phrase. A quiet pact with a friend. A ritual sentence before starting. They set the stage so choices need less energy. They tuck meaning into tiny moments. Which small story might carry your next ordinary decision?
Story steady choices. Now notice rhythm. Effort arrives in waves. Rest is part of the work. Track body cues. Slow down before tiredness becomes crisis. Schedule pauses like tasks. Return without judgment. What quiet signal will tell you to stop and to begin again? Pick one lever. 5 minutes of clarity. One small ritual to return to. A phrase that names who you are. Keep it tiny. Keep it tender. Practice return, not perfection. Step back. Breathe. Watch the days rearrange themselves. And notice what wants to come next. Stay with that small lever. Let the days rearrange themselves around it. Be present to the tiny returns. No rush. Let ritual become gentle architecture, patient, forgiving. Over time, the map clarifies. For now, breathe into the margin. Notice what shifts when you simply stay. Now, attention is the real ledger. Choose one thing to protect each morning. Close the door on small urgencies. Let less live on your plate. Notice focus, how it stretches, how it thins. Not force. Care. Soon we'll look at practical guards. For now, what single thing deserves your quiet today? Think of your inner terrain. For quiet axis show where discipline acts, attention, what you keep, context, what surrounds you, story, who you believe you are, shadow, the impulses running below thought. Make them visible. Fold them into small, testable rules. Picture a creased map on a wooden table, a single pencil resting along the trail.
Now move from map to motion. Small rules change trajectories. A 1-minute habit. A removed temptation. A single cue that reroutes days. Discipline becomes architecture. Gentle constraints that save attention. They stack without drama. Try one. Watch how one tiny seam opens space for more. What rule would you give that map? One rule starts to shape who you believe you are. Identity is a soft architecture. Your shadow holds the impulses you deny. Meet it gently. Ask, which quiet story runs my days? Listen. Something in the answer will ask to be rewritten.
Turn the new story into ritual. Not a list. A quiet rehearsal. Each morning, breathe, name one intention, do one small, deliberate act. Premeditatio, imagine friction, practice return. Voluntary discomfort maps limits. Rituals make discipline porous. They invite you back. Try one tonight. Notice what comes. Now we tend our attention. Rituals open the doorway. Attention is a currency. It is easily spent. Each choice nudges where you invest. Fewer inputs. Deeper engagement. Let attention be scarce by design. Notice where your gaze settles. What are you buying with it? Stories move attention the way a river moves sediment. Small phrases, I keep my mornings clear, I return when I stray, become gentle contracts. Tell one line to yourself each morning. Say it slow. Let it sit. Over time, the line gathers weight. What story will you let carry your days? Stories shape where we move. They also set our pace. Work feels clearer when paired with rest. Design small pauses. Let breath be a marker. Schedule renewal like a sentence break. Practice returning. Discipline becomes rhythm, a tide of effort and undoing. What would a day feel like if you met work with that kind of patience? Choose one lever. A single, small change that bends your day. Choose one ritual, 5 slow breaths before you begin. Choose one sentence that returns you to yourself. Practice them without force. Let them sit. Watch what shifts. Stay with the smallness. See what wakes. Keep it small. One lever. One ritual. One sentence to return you. Practice without urgency. Return without judgment. Track nothing. Notice everything. Let the plan be soft. Let it outlast a single day. When you forget, breathe and ask, what woke today? Let the plan live at the edge of your day. One small lever. A ritual you can return to without fanfare. Fail. Return. Breathe. Notice the room that holds you. Tomorrow, ask simply, what did the quiet teach me? Choose one lever. A tiny, repeatable ritual. Make it small enough to fail and return. Let silence be the measurement. Over weeks, watch margins widen. Old choices fall away without drama. Carry one question into tomorrow. What does the absence of noise reveal? Keep that lever. One small ritual. No overhaul. Return when you fail. Over weeks, the margins widen. Notice where your attention rests. Let quiet keep the score. Move with less hurry. Tend the small thing. Step back. Watch what grows. What will tomorrow quietly show? Now imagine a quiet map. Attention at the center. Environment shaping the edges. Identity traces the paths. Hidden impulses, young shadow lurking in valleys. Discipline acts where these meet, where attention, context, and story converge. What corner of your map calls for small tending? Start small. One simple rule. A habit that removes a decision. Move the cue. Add a tiny friction or remove one. Over months, these edges gather weight. Mabel calls it leverage, small inputs, wide effects. Not heroic effort. Quiet architecture. What is one rule you could set today that makes the next choice almost inevitable? A habit is a voice in your inner story. Discipline sticks when it fits the person you are becoming. Notice the shadow that resists the script. Which part of you needs listening now?
Listen. Sketch the inner map, attention, context, story. Name one recurring pull. Notice its tone. Follow it quietly. See where it opens. Small rules change the map. One cue. One remove friction. A single default. Over years, they compound. Discipline becomes architecture, not willpower. Make one tiny bet on your future self. Then watch what rearranges. Notice the stories that steer you. A hidden shadow nudges old habits. Discipline asks for honest authorship, small acts that change who you believe you are. Sit with that. What story waits to be rewritten? Now breathe. Discipline rises and falls like the tide. Work with intention. Rest with equal seriousness. Let recovery be planned, not accidental. Small pauses become practice. How might your day change if you learn to return?
Name one lever. Practice one small ritual each morning. Hold one quiet sentence that explains why. Let the plan be tender and flexible. Step back. Watch how it changes you. And notice what stays. Tend that single practice. Edit it kindly. Carry the quiet sentence like a small lamp. Observe what shifts. Notice what remains. Wait, then let the next change find you. Now, begin to map the inner terrain. Attention. Environment. The stories you live by. The shadow, those unseen pulls. Put them on a quiet map, where your gaze lingers, where choice is thin. Imagine a single lamp in a dark room. Follow that light. That lamp shows one step. Small rules live there. Remove friction. Add one clear cue. Quiet changes compound. What tiny adjustment could bend your day?
Now map the inner terrain. Attention, environment, identity, shadow. These are the compass points. Notice where your attention slips. Imagine a single open window. What enters next? Small rules gather at the window's sill. Remove a choice. Close a tiny door. Friction shifts. Days reorder. Begin with 1. Watch what quietly returns. Look inward. For territories, attention, environment, the story you tell, in the shadow below. Discipline works at their edges, where context shapes attention and stories hold sway. Imagine a dim atlas, softly unfolding. Start small. 1 removed choice, 1 added rule. Friction folds into structure. Over months, silence gathers as leverage. Notice which tiny change shifts the map, and which remains a whisper. Now, look inward. The habits live inside a story you tell. There is a shadow, neglected desire, old fear. Name it. Meet it gently. What story wants to change? Turn that story into ritual. Small, repeated acts. Not commands. A morning gesture. A practiced return. Over time it becomes language, not force. Try 1 quiet rule tonight. Notice how you come back.
Those practiced returns buy you attention. Attention is finite. Protect it. Dim the noise. Narrow the task. Watch the room inside you breathe. What, now, are you willing to let in? A story becomes a doorway. Tiny phrases act as signposts. They simplify choice. Not commands, anchors. Try 1. Which sentence, quietly repeated, would carry you forward? Listen to the space between your sentences. Discipline keeps time like a tide: push, retreat, replenish. Make 1 small rule: after an hour, stand and breathe. Let silence measure your pace. What would this rhythm ask of you next?
Now look inward. Map attention, environment, identity, and the shadow. Imagine a dim lantern moving through a quiet room. Which corner will you clear first? Now, choose 1 small gate. A single rule that reshapes the room. Reduce friction. Add a cue. Let the habit scaffold the choice until it feels ordinary. Small leverage. Quiet momentum. Which door will that tiny rule open for you? Turn inward. The tiny rule meets a deeper architecture, identity, the stories you inhabit, and the shadow you rarely name. Discipline becomes steady only when it fits that shape. What part of you will carry this quietly forward? Let the story settle. Notice the quiet resistance. Offer it one small covenant, a practice it can trust. Meet it without judgment. Watch how habits bend when stories shift. What might you ask that part? Listen. Offer one small ritual, a simple, repeatable gesture that says, "I remember you." Practice it daily. Watch how trust returns slowly. Then notice what shifts next.
Now attention becomes the real currency. Small rituals free space. Choices thin. Fewer commitments anchor more depth. Guarding focus is a gentle discipline. What will you keep, and what will you quietly let go? Stories shape the spaces between choices. One simple line anchors behavior. A social promise. A whispered identity. Over time it lifts friction. Listen for the phrase that will meet you and
Let it be small. A sentence you carry like a coin. Speak it quietly. Watch choices then. Feel the room that opens between wanting and doing. Now notice the inner landscape, attention, environment, identity, and the shadow at the border. Picture a quiet map. Soft paths. Hidden ravines. We will walk it slowly. Small structures change the terrain. One rule. One removed temptation. Tiny frictions shifted. Over months, leverage accumulates. Not force, architecture. Imagine a door you never open. What happens next? Behind that closed door lives a smaller story. The one you tell when no one listens. Identity shapes habit more than will. The shadow holds impulses we disown. To discipline it, first we notice. Then ask, who keeps this door shut? Open the door slowly. No grand revelation. Just one remembered choice. Watch who steps out. Notice the voice you follow. Then ask, quietly, which story needs room to breathe? Now map the inner terrain. Attention, environment, identity, the shadow. Each is a room. Your gaze settles a path. Small changes reroute days. Imagine a quiet table with 4 objects. Which one do you pick?
Place one small rule on the table. Let it nudge the path. A cleared doorway. One less decision. Over time, leverage finds you. Which rule would change tomorrow? Now widen the frame. Notice attention, environment, identity, and the shadow that tugs at choices. Discipline lands where those meet. Picture a quiet room with 4 corners. Which corner holds your next step? Look into each corner. Attention is the window. Environment frames the choices. Identity writes the rules. The shadow carries what we deny. Trace them slowly. Pick one corner and sit with it. What moves there, quietly?
Choose a tiny rule. Remove a single friction. Let context carry the habit. Compound happens in silence. Leverage is small actions magnified. Try one change. See how the inner map shifts. Our habits are sentences written by a quieter self, identity. The shadow holds what we deny. Meeting it softens the tug of reactive impulse. Discipline then becomes fidelity to a chosen story. Listen. What part of you needs to be named?
Small rituals bind story to body. Not victories, but rehearsals. A morning gesture. A quiet question. Over time, the body remembers what the mind intended. Try one simple repetition. See how it asks you to return. Rituals quiet the mind. In that silence, attention reveals its shape. It is currency, small and finite. How you spend it becomes your life. What would you guard if focus were money? Stories become the architecture of attention. A single sentence repeated each morning. A small pact. These micro-narratives steer choices when will is tired. Which sentence will you carry? You carry a sentence into your day. Let it be tempered by rhythm. Work, then return. Rest is not a reward, it is part of the practice. Notice where your breath catches. What wants to slow down? Choose one small lever. A single ritual. Keep it tender. Practice without drama. Let the rest arrange itself. And then listen what asks to come next. Stay tender. Let the chosen act arrive each morning like a quiet bell. Repeat it. Let the day reshape around that small insistence. Wait. What shifts if you simply keep showing up? Look inward. Map attention, environment, the narratives you carry, and the shadow beneath. Discipline acts where focus, context, and story meet. Picture a dim, clear map unfolding on a table. What would you trace first? Trace one line. A tiny rule. Move a chair. Close a tab. Set a 5-minute anchor. Small frictions gone. Leverage grows quietly. What single change reshapes your map?
A chair moved. A tab closed. Now notice the story beneath. Who keeps the chair moved, and why? Identity is quiet muscle. The shadow tugs, soft and persistent. Meet it with curiosity. Let the will reshape its vocabulary. So how does identity become habit? Not through will alone, but through ritual. Small, repeatable acts that outlast mood. A morning motion. A brief promise kept to yourself. What would your first ritual be? Rituals are rehearsals. They ask less of will. They invite return. A cup, a breath, a short vow repeated. Not perfect. Not final. Just a scene to come back to. What small seam could you stitch tomorrow? A ritual offers a seam. Attention chooses which seams remain. The world pulls. Protect one cleared hour. See what fills it. What claims your attention when nothing demands it? Map the inner landscape. Attention, environment, identity, the shadow. Each corner guides choice. Discipline lives where they meet. Imagine a faded map on a wooden table. Trace one quiet path. Start with one small rule. Remove a single friction. Over months, those modest moves compound, reshaping the map you traced. Leverage hides in the mundane. Which quiet change calls you?
Look inward. Notice where your attention drifts. The room you keep. The story you tell. The parts you hide. Discipline arrives at these crossroads: attention, context, identity. Map them quietly. Imagine a dim, empty table, a place to set one deliberate object. Think of 4 coordinates: attention, environment, identity, shadow. They mark where discipline lands. Watch where energy leaks. Name one small change. Set it on the table, a single candle, quietly lit.
You light the candle. Then one tiny rule follows. Hide distractions. Add one ritual. Small frictions removed. Tiny habits stack into leverage. What single rule could quietly tilt your day? A single rule meets a deeper story. Who you tell yourself you are steadies habits. The shadow waits, not enemy but tenant, needing light. How might your story hold that small rule? Turn that rule into a ritual. Small, repeatable acts. Not punishment. A rehearsal that welcomes failure. Start with 2 breaths and one tiny promise. Then listen. That small ritual clears a corner of your day. Attention is the scarce coin. Protect it by design. Reduce noisy options. Invite single, deep tasks. What returns when you stop answering everything? When attention narrows, the stories that surround you widen. Pick one small, repeatable line. I am the kind of person who, and listen for what answers follow. Say it aloud. Wait. Hear the claim settle in the body. Notice the quiet friction between story and movement. Stay with that distance. It is where discipline takes a gentle, patient shape. Now, map the inner terrain. Attention, environment, identity, the shadow, simple compass points. See where your focus drifts. Notice what your space asks of you. Listen to the old stories that pull. Hold the map lightly. What quiet corner draws you next? Pick one small rule. Remove one friction. Let leverage do the rest. Discipline becomes silent architecture. Watch what quietly changes. Over time, those small edits ask a question. Who do you become inside them? The quiet choices shape a private story, half light, half shadow, waiting to be acknowledged, without fanfare.
Rituals turn those private stories into gentle scaffolding. Not commands. Rehearsals. Small, repeatable motions that forgive and call you back. How might a day be lived as practice? If rituals scaffold the day, attention chooses its shape. Protect it. Say no to small pulls. Keep fewer things. Notice the silence between tasks. What becomes possible then? Stories follow focus. A quiet phrase, I return, redirects the day before Will wakes. Repeated, it becomes a path. Not grand. Small. Try one tonight. Notice what it begins to shape. Look inward. Notice where attention drifts, the cues in your room, the stories you tell, and the shadow you avoid. Make a simple map. Start at one corner. Observe. Stay curious about what shifts. See three axes: attention, context, story. Discipline lives at their intersections. Trace them slowly. Notice the quiet corners where the shadow slips in. Imagine a room with 3 doors. Open one door. Let a single, tiny rule live there. Remove a friction. Arrange an obvious cue. Over months, leverage accumulates. Discipline becomes architecture, not willpower. Which small rule would change this room?
You built a door. Now walk inside. Habits trace a self. The stories you tell become the house. Notice the shadow rooms. Which corners need light? Light a corner with a small, deliberate ritual. Not a demand, but a rehearsal. Do it once. Then again. Build tolerance. Watch how the room answers. What might return? Notice what fills the newly lit corner. Attention gathers like dust motes. Each small ritual buys a degree of silence. Less noise. More choice. What will you let have your attention next?
Attention becomes soil. Stories are seeds. A small, repeatable sentence, your micronarrative, reroutes impulse into habit. It needn't be grand. It only needs to fit. What quiet story will you carry forward? Work grows from attention. Rest returns it. Discipline is a rhythm, not a march. Learn the slow counters, small recovery acts, breath-led pauses, predictable endings. Notice what steadies you. What does rest ask of you? Take one lever. One ritual. One story to carry you. Start small. Expect return more than perfection. Keep the plan thin. Tend it like a quiet lamp. Then step back. Breathe. Notice what asks to continue.
Let the lamp warm the dark. Return when you are ready. Discipline is a patient current, not a command. Keep the lamp. Watch the room change. What else asks to be tended? First, notice where your attention drifts. Then the room becomes a mindscape, attention, environment, the stories you tell, and the shadow beneath. Map these corners slowly. Which axis feels most worn? Choose one tiny rule. Remove a single friction. Repeat until it disappears. Small architectures create leverage. Quiet shifts change trajectory over time. What will you simplify first? You picked a simplification. Listen to the story that rises with it. Identity speaks in small claims. I am disciplined, I am not. The shadow keeps its ledger. Inviting both softens will into practice. Which part of you is asking for care? Soften the should into small, repeatable forms. Rituals learn you. A morning tie. A quiet promise. They forgive lapses and call you back. Try one. Notice what returns.